Our stories have never been more important. At a time when some people are trying to simplify our country as though there's only one story and everybody else has to fit into it, it falls to storytellers like those in the room tonight to tell the truth about Australia. A nation of more than 24 million stories where every one of them is uniquely and distinctively ours. They're either stories that go back to the first sunrise on this land, or they're stories of immigration, and we all fit into one or both of those two stories. Our stories take us across the landscape. Kate Grenville took us to the secret Hawkesbury River, David Malouf to Jono's Brisbane, Christos Salakis to suburban Melbourne, Craig Silvey to the country home of Jasper Jones. Patrick White dragged us across the continent from east to west, nearly as far as what would later become the site of Joan London's polio ward in the Golden Age, or any one of Tim Winton's rugged beaches. And the world has learnt about itself through an Australian pen. When Tom Keneally wrote of Oscar Schindler, Stephen Carroll took us to the Blitz, Anna Funda uncovered Stasi land, or Hannah Kent took us to Iceland and then to Ireland. The setting wasn't Australia, the voices and the dialogue wasn't ours, but the lens, the storyteller, was ours. The love of reading starts early, and it's nearly always an Australian children's author who's found a copy of The Diary of a Wombat or The Magic of a Possum. In mentioning children's novels, I won't acknowledge Andy Griffiths tonight. 2 weeks ago, I felt fantastic for all of an hour after I built a 2-storey treehouse. My stepson climbed straight into it and got out his copy of the 78-storey treehouse. I'm not over it, mate. But the greatest strength of our stories isn't how high or how far they take us. It's how deep within they travel. Storytellers make sure we know more than the story of our own lives. And at every step, authors have a power that's different to every other art form. You can constantly and intimately share with your readers the thoughts of somebody else. Not just how they react, but how they feel, how they hurt, the tears that they don't want anyone else to know about. It's a gift, a rare and precious gift, to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and have your reader cry, laugh, celebrate, and hope for characters they've only met through you. These stories end up being more than the story that you wrote. The emotions and ideas that fill your readers become not just your story, but part of the reader's own lives, a marker of the moments when they set aside time to let your words carry us. Storm Boy for me isn't only about the relationship between a boy and his father and Fingerbone Bill. For me, it takes me back to my own childhood when my sister bought me a copy of it a few months before the film came out. And as a result, I developed a love of the Coorong nearly 40 years before I was put in charge of it as part of the Murray-Darling Basin. An author's gift, though, takes on that extra layer of bravery when you tell your own story in autobiography. Stan Grant, Major Sabansky, Jimmy Barnes have all shared torment, trauma, and triumph by telling us about challenges that never come near most Australians but are intrinsically part of Australia's story. And all three were public figures who we thought we knew. And then we read their words and realised before they published, we didn't really know much about them at all. I was a kid walking down the steps of the Opera House after my parents had taken us on one of those free tours when, for the first time in my life, I saw a band playing there in the forecourt. There was a small crowd and it got bigger and bigger, and Mum said, "Oh, when we get home, I'll look up in the paper and I'll tell you the name of the band. And sure enough, we got home, she opened the paper and she said, oh, that's a strange name for a band. Cold Chisel. Circus Animals then became the second album that I bought from my paper run money. A few years later, with two other mates, we all pitched in so we could afford a copy of the video of the Last Stand concert. At a Land Rides concert a few years later at Homebush, it was billed as Crowded House playing, and at the end, unexpectedly, Jimmy Barnes also joined them on the stage. And in the darkest and loneliest moments that I've been through in my life, the song that has always followed me was Flame Trees. I knew what Jimmy Barnes's career had meant to me. I knew how the stories he told through song were embedded with my story, but I didn't know him. One night, while Jimmy was watching an Australian story through film called Snowtown, he recognised the streets, the houses. He reached for his laptop and he started writing. Some of the words he wrote are these. He described the story of a lifetime spent running away, running from fear, running from shame, but at the same time running from hope. I am not running anymore. I've caught the train to the Opera House many times since Mum and Dad first took me there, and we accidentally and unknowingly attended a Cold Chisel concert. But of all the shows, performances and events I've attended at the Sydney Opera House, I've never been more moved than I was when Sky and I went there last year and the show was Working Class Boy. I saw Jimmy Barnes not look his normal confident self on stage, but pacing back and forth and looking down as he shared stories that were hard to share. And with his beautiful family on stage with him, he took the words that he'd typed and he said them out loud. I'm so grateful he told his story. I'm grateful for those who've been prompted to come forward since with their own stories as a result. I'm grateful for the chance to understand something of the challenges too many families faced and still face. And I'm grateful just to know him through his story. Someone who I've always admired as a singer, a musician, a songwriter, and now also as a survivor, a member of an extraordinary family, a truly great Australian. He's the singer of Working Class Man, the author of Working Class Boy. Friends, storytellers, Jimmy Barnes.